Out of nowhere, my ex-husband stopped paying child support. He says our daughter is 21 now and that he's done his part. How can he be so cruel? What happened to him? I don't even know how to explain how outraged I feel. While we live in poverty, my ex is surrounded by luxury, and that doesn't seem fair. But I suppose to make anyone understand my frustration, I need to tell the whole story from the beginning that I married Eduardo when I was 22. We were young, idealistic, and looking back, I think that was a grave mistake. Camila, our daughter, was born before we got married, so by the time we divorced, she was already 16. It wasn't a terrible marriage, I suppose. But over the years, I started feeling suffocated, trapped, erased. And before anyone starts asking questions or jumping to conclusions, yes, I was unfaithful to Eduardo. I'm not sure if it should be called infidelity, at least not in the crudest sense. It wasn't a fleeting affair or something purely physical. It was, if you will, an act of emotional survival, a desperate search to feel alive again. Eduardo played his role. He provided financially, paid the bills, kept a roof over our heads. But he wasn't there, not emotionally, not with me. He was always working, coming home late, eating in silence, and falling asleep in front of the TV. I spent years feeling lonely, invisible, as if I didn't exist beyond being the mother of his daughter and the woman who handled everything domestic. So when I met someone who looked at me like I was desirable, like I was interesting, I didn't hesitate. I saw it clearly. That man made me realize everything I was missing, everything I no longer felt with Eduardo. Yes, I know I should have confronted Eduardo, been honest, talked it out. But at the time, it felt like the most important thing was to follow my heart. If you want to blame me for something, blame me for not telling the truth sooner. Though, to be honest, it wasn't exactly a secret. Camila knew from the start. I told her myself. We've always been more than just mother and daughter, we're partners. I told her how her father had slowly isolated me, how he convinced me to abandon my studies to focus on the home, how he left me without the tools to rebuild my life. I told her that what I was doing was for me, but also for her. I didn't want her to grow up watching a resigned, withered, dimmed woman. Camila understood. She hugged me, said she supported me. When it all came out, when Eduardo exploded, when we had the worst fight of our lives, Camila chose to stay with me. Eduardo, of course, tried to manipulate her. He offered her to live with him, promised stability, swore I was confused. But she didn't waver. She said she wanted to stay with me, that it was us against the world. The divorce wasn't a huge legal battle. The house was sold, the money was split, and Eduardo agreed to pay monthly child support for Camila. With that, I left with a man who had brought me back to life. He had money, connections, a world of his own. He helped me get an apartment in a decent area, and we started a life together. It wasn't perfect, but at least I felt like I had a new chance. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. One day, he told me he was getting married to someone else. He said what we had was special, but he couldn't keep seeing me. And just like that, he vanished from my life. He left me alone, with a daughter, no stable job, and rent I couldn't sustain for long. It was tough, really tough, but I told myself I'd been through worse. There wasn't much left of the money from the house, so we moved to a smaller place. Years passed like that, always cutting expenses, tightening the budget more and more. Eventually, our life depended almost entirely on the child support Eduardo sent every month. And that brings us to the current problem. On the 5th of last month, as usual, I checked my accounts to do the monthly shopping. That's when I noticed Eduardo's deposit hadn't arrived. I thought maybe it was a slight delay, that something had come up. Despite everything that happened, he had always been punctual with the money. He never missed a single month. The truth is, since the divorce, neither Camila nor I had had any contact with him. At first, Eduardo tried to reach out to her, even sent her messages inviting her to talk. But Camila always refused. She told me she wasn't interested, that he was a stranger, that she didn't want to talk to someone who didn't really know her. I respected her decision. After all, I had no interest in reopening old wounds either. But as I said, Eduardo kept up his end. Every month without fail. Until now. That day I decided to wait. I thought maybe he gotten the date wrong or had a banking issue. So I rearranged some payments, postponed what I could, and tried to stay calm. Days passed. A week. Then 2. Nothing. No deposit. No message. No explanation. I started to worry. Something told me this wasn't just a simple oversight. Frustrated and out of patience, I decided to track him down. The first problem was that it was hard to find him. None of the numbers I had worked. Not his old phone, his email, or his former workplace contact. I had no idea where he lived, so I couldn't just show up. I had to contact the lawyer who handled our divorce, and after several calls and evasions, he finally gave me Eduardo's new number, though not without asking why I needed it. I didn't give him details, just said it was an urgent family matter. When I finally called, Eduardo answered in a professional tone. He sounded fine, confident, even relaxed. But the moment I said it was me, his tone changed. It wasn't aggressive, but it was completely indifferent. Cold. Like he was talking to a stranger who owed him money. That irritated me more than I expected. I mean, he was the one in the wrong. He should have contacted me first, at least to give a heads up. But there he was, acting like I was a nuisance. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. I told him Camila's child support payment hadn't arrived, that it was late, and I needed to know if there was a problem with his bank. He paused for a few seconds, then answered with a casualness that left me frozen. Camila is 21 now. I'm no longer obligated to pay for her. It was like a slap in the face. Harsh. Cold. Without warning. I knew the original agreement was to pay until she was 18 or 21 if she was still studying. But it never crossed my mind that Eduardo, as meticulous and formal as he was, would just stop paying without saying a word. And for his own daughter, no less. I tried to reason with him. I told him yes, Camila was 21, but she was still in college. He couldn't just cut her off like that when she still had a long way to go to finish her degree. But then he got angry. His voice turned harder. Don't come at me with that college excuse, he said. I looked into it. Camila's not only been failing courses, but she's constantly absent and underperforming. I'm not going to keep throwing money at someone who isn't serious about studying. I was speechless. It's true Camila had struggled with her studies. I won't deny it. But that didn't give him the right to just walk away and leave her adrift. The fact that she's finding it hard doesn't mean he should abandon her. I got upset. I told him that was the mark of a bad father, that only someone cruel would leave their daughter in poverty for not being perfect. But he didn't back down. On the contrary. And you have the nerve to say that to me, he shot back, furious. You were the bad mother. You had her living off my money all these years without teaching her anything. You turned her into a version of you, directionless, purposeless. And now you want me to keep funding that? Forget it. It's over. And he hung up. Just like that. Camila was by my side the whole time, silent, listening. When she saw me hang up, she asked what happened, what her father had said. But I didn't know how to answer. How do you tell your daughter that her father discarded her like she was an unnecessary expense? How do you explain that everything we had until now was gone? But what truly terrified me in that moment wasn't the conversation itself. It was what came next. How were we going to pay the bills? How were we going to live? I didn't have a job. Camila didn't know how to do anything. Everything we had came from the money Eduardo sent each month. Without it, we were completely adrift, desperate. I decided to find him in person. I didn't want to make a scene. I just wanted to talk, to at least get him to agree to pay until the end of the year, to give us some time to reorganize. Because cutting us off without warning, without any margin or consideration, was cruel, and there had to be some legal way to prevent it. Isn't it illegal to stop paying without notification? Aren't there consequences for leaving a dependent daughter without support? I had to practically trick one of the wives of Eduardo's old friends to get his address. I told her Camila wanted to surprise him. When I finally had the address, I was stunned. Eduardo now lived in one of the most expensive areas of the city, a gated community with huge houses, clean streets, manicured gardens. It was another world, completely removed from the life we were living. His house was enormous, white, modern, elegant, with electric gates and cameras. When I rang the bell, a maid answered. Yes, a maid. The woman was curt. She said the gentleman wasn't home. She didn't let me in, didn't offer me a seat or even water. Just told me to come back later. So I waited. I wasn't going to leave, not after coming all that way. A couple of hours later, I saw a sleek black car pull up. Eduardo got out, dressed in designer clothes, expensive shoes, a shiny watch. And with him was a woman, tall, well-groomed, young. They clearly came from some event. I rushed to the gate and shouted his name. If that woman was his partner, it could work in my favor. I figured she probably didn't know anything about me. I could use the awkwardness to pressure him, maybe get her to intervene, to take our side. Eduardo approached the gate but didn't open it. The woman followed a few steps behind. I seized the moment. So this is your life now? Surrounded by luxury while your daughter and I live in poverty. Does that seem fair to you? He looked at me without expression, like nothing mattered to him. I paid for years, he replied. I gave her opportunities. I offered to meet, to talk, to rebuild something. But she never wanted to. Not a call, not a visit, nothing. Don't come crying to me about poverty now. If she didn't take advantage of what I gave her, that's not my problem anymore. And he turned away. As if I wasn't even there, I started calling out to him, shouting. Again and again. I was furious, desperate. But he walked into the house like he didn't hear me. So I started ringing the bell, over and over, until the garden sprinklers turned on. A jet of water soaked me from head to toe. I swear I've never felt so humiliated in my life. The woman watched it all from inside, and all I could think was that I was the one by his side when he had nothing. When we ate rice and lentils 3 times a week, I was the one who endured years of his distance, his absences. But now she's the one enjoying his success. She's the one living in that house. She's the one reaping the benefits. That's why I'm writing this. I need help. I've come to understand that, legally, he may not have to keep paying now that Camila is 21. But all these years, he sent the same amount every month. He never adjusted the child support, even though I'm sure he was earning more and more. So shouldn't he have given us more back then? Isn't there something that can be done retroactively? If he doesn't want to pay any more going forward, I'll accept it. But at the very least, he should pay what he didn't give us before. How do I make him acknowledge that? Update 1. I'm not even going to respond to all the insults and mockery I've received since posting my story. I know this place is full of bitter men who vent their hate on anyone who doesn't stay silent. So this update isn't for them. It's for those who asked if I've made any progress. And the answer, sadly, is no. As many of you kindly pointed out, once Camila turned 21, there's absolutely nothing I can do. I didn't want to believe it. I genuinely thought there had to be some exception, some way to claim what's fair. But even after contacting a lawyer, they made it clear. According to the agreement, Eduardo was only obligated to pay until Camila was 21, and he did. He could have paid more, yes, since his income clearly increased over time. But for that to have happened, I would have needed to file a formal request at the time. That's what the lawyer said, that it doesn't happen automatically, that I had to have requested it. But how was I supposed to know that? No one ever told me I needed to review the amount periodically. No one said I could demand more if he earned more. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't have friends in the courts. I just trusted he'd pay what was fair. It's disheartening to see how the system, which is supposed to protect families, turns its back on women in cases like this. Because yes, you can say whatever you want, but this is part of the patriarchy. He earns more, but he's not obligated to share it. He moves on with his life, and we're left behind. And they expect us not to feel betrayed? So no, there's nothing we can do. We can't claim what he stopped giving. We can't ask for anything retroactively. We can't even force a conversation. Nothing. Legally, Eduardo is within his rights to not give another cent. And I, after everything I did for that family, have to sit back and watch him live like a king while my daughter and I can barely eat properly. That I've tried contacting him again, in case his reaction was because that woman was there. It wouldn't be the first time a man changes his attitude to look good in front of his partner. Eduardo was always a reasonable man, someone you could talk to. That's why I still don't understand what happened to him. What kind of poison did they feed him to make him act like we're strangers? I sent him several messages. I wasn't aggressive. I just asked him to talk, to think about Camila, to at least give her a chance to explain herself. But he didn't respond. He's completely shut down. Not a word, not even I don't want to talk. Nothing. Total silence. It's clear he's changed. And not for the better. A few days ago, Camila had an idea. We were talking, crying really, because the situation has spiraled out of control. There's no money. There's no help. Bills are piling up. The credit cards are maxed out. I can't even pay next month's rent. Camila said maybe the best thing was for her to try to see him. That if he hated me, he might at least listen to her. And then she came up with a plan. She said she'd go to his house, show up like she'd run away. She'd tell him she didn't want anything to do with me, that she wanted to reconnect with her father. Maybe that would soften him. Maybe it would touch him. Maybe that way we get something, at least support until the end of the year. Time for her to get back to classes, for me to find a job. Time to breathe. She was excited. She really thought it would work. She packed a backpack with clothes, put on her best pants, even got ready to look like a responsible daughter. I hugged her before she left. I didn't want to tell her not to do it, because deep down, I had that hope too. That maybe, seeing her like that, Eduardo would remember Camila was his little girl, that it still meant something to him. I stayed home the whole time, nervous, waiting, checking my phone every 5 minutes. Hours passed, and then I heard the door. It was Camila. She came back devastated. Her eyes were swollen, her face red from crying. She collapsed in my arms the moment she walked in, screaming, crying, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. It was even harder to make out what she was saying. The reality was worse than I'd imagined. They didn't let her in. Eduardo didn't even bother to see her. It was the maid who dealt with her at the door. Camila explained she wanted to see her father, that she was his daughter, that she'd come alone, that she needed to talk to him, that she'd run away from home. The maid looked at her with annoyance and told her to wait. She went inside to deliver the message. Camila waited a few minutes, hopeful. When the woman came back, she said just one thing. The boss says it's too late to reconnect. Go back to your mother. That was it. Not a single word from him. Not a glance. Not an open door. Nothing. Camila broke down. She cried right there, screamed, insulted the maid. She called her a coward, asked how she could repeat that message without feeling anything. But the woman just said if she didn't leave, she'd call the police. So Camila had to go. Alone. Humiliated. With her backpack on her shoulder and her soul shattered. I listened to her, and I didn't know what to say. How do you console your daughter after something like that? I don't know what we're going to do now. We have no money. We have no one to turn to. My family can't help us. Camila doesn't have the strength to go back to school. And I don't even know where to start. What I can't wrap my head around, what keeps me up every night, is what happened to Eduardo. Where's the man who once held me when I cried? Who stayed up all night when Camila had a fever? Who worked hard to provide for us? When did he become so heartless? How can he ignore his daughter and move on like it's nothing? All I can do is wait. Maybe he'll realize the harm he's causing. Maybe, if someone close to him reads this, they can make him see he still has a daughter who just wants to study and live with dignity.